All right. Hello, everybody. We will get started. I think we're just trying to get one more speaker on stage. I think it's BAC Games, if you guys would jump on. But anyways, we're going to get started with our show today. I know people are going to keep trickling in, but might as well jump into some introductions. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Frontera. I am the founder and CEO of Apollo Entertainment, the company behind the Satoshiverse and the Legions 2029 game. I've been in the space since 2017. I've been doing this for a long time. Before that, I was a lawyer in the entertainment industry and just, fell in love with the idea of digital asset ownerships and started building Apollo and Satoshiverse with our wonderful team. For those who don't know Satoshiverse, we got started back in 2020 as a comic NFT project with legendary comic artist Jose Delbo, and we have evolved into an entire gaming and comic ecosystem with our feature game Legions 2029, which we just announced today, our latest update. So I won't go too deep into the game. You can check out the pinned tweet at the top of the spaces for all the newest things. I guess what I will say is that it is free to play and there's a ton of prizes for participating and playing this early version of the game. We're constantly developing and we definitely love to have people come in, play it, and give us feedback that we can then incorporate right into the development of the game. So check out the pinned tweet and definitely, try out the game. I think that's the easiest thing. It's free. It's free to play. You just download it from the website link in the post. But that is all for us for now. Now I want to jump over to the rest of this awesome panel that we have. Before that, a couple housekeeping items. So what we're going to do, we have this post at the top, the We're Live post from our new Hideout account. That is going to be your opportunity to get some crystals at the end of this spaces. But if you retweet that post, you're going to be able to be entered to get some crystals at the end of this spaces as long as you're here. So let's definitely spread the word about the spaces and get some retweets on that post so that we can definitely get more people in here. And then another housekeeping item, if any of our awesome guests have anything that they would want to pin to the top or talk about, we definitely encourage it. We want our community to hear what is going on your side. So without further ado, let's get into some quick introductions. Please tell us about yourselves, what you guys are building, anything that you feel people should know. Let's start with Wax. Thanks for coming back on. It's nice to have you guys. Good to see you.
Nick, glad to be here. So I'm Michael Rubinelli. I'm the Chief Gaming Officer at Wax. And, Wax is the number one, blockchain in the world when it comes to gaming in terms of, wallet size, transactional volume, and time to finality. And we're building a game called Spin Tycoon that we're super excited about. It's coming out at some point later in the summer. And I think the thing that you'll see with Wax is that we're a little bit different from other kind of, blockchain companies and content creators in that we're always testing, experimenting, and trying to find things that work differently to the benefit of both the player and the developer. Because I think right now that economic balance is not working for a lot of developers. And so players, they want to make as much as they can, but developers also need to run a business. So trying to strike that balance and testing and learning around how to build a really kind of equilibrium in that ecosystem for both parties is something we're looking to do. So we break a lot of eggs. We do things that aren't maybe intuitive, but we do it for the greater good of both player and developer.
Amazing. Well, to me, you said something really important there, and that, we talk a lot about user onboarding and how do we create incentives for users and, what that looks like, right? And we talk about just building great games. And sometimes, what we don't realize is that there have to be incentives to build really great games at a macro level, right? So building out those business models and proving it out first is, I think, the key, right? As soon as we can show, hey guys, there's something here that's unique. and start attracting AAA studios and really talented game developers to the space, I think the people will follow because that's how great games end up here, right? So
Yeah,
it's
and
awesome to hear you guys are doing that.
yeah, thanks. We could do a whole episode on kind of what is blocking mass adoption, but clearly mass adoption is the number one problem facing everybody in the space, right? You look at kind of Web2 gaming, it's literally half the planet. It's about I figure I saw 3.7, 3.8 billion players play games every day. Like that's a lot. That's almost half the planet. And you look at the Web3 space, it's less than 100 million. I think the number's around 60 million. So between 60 million and 3.8 billion, knowing that that's the total addressable market, like what is blocking us from getting there? And yeah, gaming is certainly, content and quality is certainly one of those things, but there's a lot of other things that block that. And those are the challenges that we're interrogating and trying to resolve and remove friction so we get all as many Web2 players into the wax world as possible.
Amazing. Well, I know that we are going to be diving into some of those
Mm-hmm.
topics specifically later, so we'll save that one for
Thank
after
you.
the introduction. So thank you for being here. Let's jump over to, is it Bot Games or BAC Games? Tell us about yourself.
Hey guys, yeah, thanks for having us. You can call it BAC Games because our BAC stand for the Blast Out of Club Games. Right, so yeah, I'm Aurelian Andrew, you can call me AA. So currently we are building a series of casual games on Blast Layers, and the Blast Out of Club is actually the first game from our games. And actually there will be another two games coming out in quarter 3 and quarter 4 as well. And currently we are actually having our ID or locations program going on, and also, we're gonna have our TG happenings in this month. Yep. So currently, like for people who are actually interested to, how to get the ID or locations, or, they want to contribute to the ecosystems, feel free for them to, do some applications from our Discords, or you can look for any core contributor who already qualify. You can ask them to refer you as well. But this is what we're seeing, because we met a lot of other people, to build up a lot of games like 3A games as well. But we are actually going to, I wouldn't say not the same direction, but we are building a casual game that try to not let you to spend too many times, but I would say we are more like a strategy games. With strategy games, you have to come up with like what is the strategy for you to maximize in our game, because our games are more focused on group to earn instead of you come in, play, get earn and dump. So we are more focused on how can you earn as a group instead of how can you earn as an individual. Our games, we very encourage people to boost their social interactions. You have to communicate more with your teams or with the people who around you or in the Discord for you to gain more fun, or you can maximize your rewards on that. Well, yep, this is basically what we are doing now. So I'll pass the mic back to you.
Incredible. Well, great to have you on. Definitely interested in hearing more about the game. Again, if you have any kind of visuals or videos or anything on the gameplay, I can't speak today. Please feel free to drop it at the top of the space so that we can all see. And now we will go to our last speaker, Haven's Compass. Tell us about what you guys are building. Thanks for being on.
Hi guys, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. My name is Justin, behind the Haven's Compass account today. And we are building a very fast-paced first-person shooter game. We've been building it for the past 2.5 to 3 years. And I think it's quite similar to what you guys are doing. We're also free to play. We're open to play to everyone since last year. Actually, we've had our open alpha, which has been pretty cool. It's on Epic Games, and we've been building the game, I would say mostly using community feedback. So yeah, that is very short what we're building, and thanks again. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I love it. Well, I'm seeing your guys' latest game update video and it looks awesome. So feel free to pin that up to the space if you'd like so that everyone can see the game footage. But yeah, very, always great to see other projects building high fidelity games. in Unreal Engine. It's a interesting segment of the current blockchain gaming market in that it's probably the hardest to onboard users into currently, just because of the roadblocks around building desktop based games and integrating blockchain capabilities. And I know that there's lots of people working on solutions for that, and I think we're going to start to see real user acquisition come as we start to see some of these, more desktop-based launchers like Steam, or, even Epic Games making a bigger push on their launcher, but also with consoles starting to open up to the idea of blockchain gaming. So really, really cool to see other high fidelity games. I always get excited because that's my favorite genre. And yeah, let's definitely go over to Spencer on the Hideout account. I will make a quick plug. We just created the Hideout account so that we can provide a lot more content around the spaces. We've been doing these spaces now for over a year and a half, have really had a great following, but we've wanted to do a bit more content to go a bit deeper in the spaces. So do jump over there and give the Hideout account a follow. We are definitely, it's a new account, so we gotta get that out there and build it up. But I'm excited to keep making this a bigger spaces with more and more to offer for you guys. So that's the quick plug. Now over to Spencer on the Hideout account.
Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Spencer Vogel. I'm the business development manager with Satoshiverse and with Apollo Entertainment. Just quick reminder for people who might have joined a little bit later after Nick explained it. The post that we have pinned to the top here that says "We're live." If you'd like to participate in our giveaway today, which we're giving away some Satoshi's crystals, make sure that you retweet that tweet, the one that says "We're live," and then just stick around until the end of the space. But now, getting into the format for the space today, we're going to start off with a question for everyone. I'll call on somebody to start, and then feel free to just jump into the conversation from there. And then from there, we'll move into individual questions for each of you guys. And then if we have time, we'll do some more questions for the group at the end. Moving into the first question here, and maybe, Michael, you could start us off on this one. How do you see interoperability being achieved in the Web3 gaming space, and what does the timeline look like in your mind?
Yeah, interoperability is an interesting word. I think that it's a word that has a bunch of different definitions, and the context matters. I think a lot of times, if you go back to like late 2021, early 2022, people talked about interoperability with regards to the metaverse, and it's like, oh, if I earn this, I'm making it up. If I earn this gun in this game, I can take it to this game. And I always thought that was like, as somebody who's made games, and full disclosure, I've made games for the last 30 years of my life. So it is my everything. It's everything I've ever wanted to do. I know it fairly well. The design construct around taking one item from one game to another and making sure there's balance, there's continuity, like that'll never work. Unless you're doing it from like within the same development company, right? Like even when I was at EA, we took, content from Madden and we brought it into other games, and it never really worked well. And the customers didn't care because they're like, I don't want your football stuff in my FIFA game, as an example. So I think when we say interoperability, we have to talk about kind of what does that mean and what are we really kind of referencing. The context that I always think about interoperability, because I do think it's a really powerful thing. There's two ways it can work. One is, like, if you think about, digital goods, right? And you think about a world where there's an aesthetic component, like, sure, that can potentially work and that has value. Look what I earned here, look what I crafted here, and look where I brought it to. And where did you get that? Oh, I got that over in this metaverse or in this, MMORPG. And oh, that's cool. So there's no real impact from a gameplay standpoint, but it does have a bit of a digital kind of credibility to it, like, oh, this is rare, or it looks really good, or what have you. So I think that's a possibility. I think there's some appeal to that, especially when you're talking about branded items, like big brand, like Artifact Nikes, as an example, is the thing that first jumps to mind. But when I think about interoperability, I do think about more along the lines of how do we remove kind of the silos that exist, whether it's between chains or between wallets or between games or between NFT standards? And that's really the thing that, I tend to like to focus on, because, Web3 gaming needs to be like using the internet. Like, you show up, it doesn't matter what your browser is, it doesn't matter what search engine you use, it doesn't matter like any of these things. Like, you show up and the intended action you want to take gets a result that you want to get, right? So you don't have these barriers in place. And that's really when I think about interoperability, I think about kind of, seamlessly being able to transition through all these different, digital gameplay experiences. And I'm not blocked by things that I have to, go watch a video on how to open a MetaMask wallet, or I have to understand, why does my NFT standard on this chain not work on that chain, and all those things there. That to me is the thing that I really like to focus on. I don't know if I answered your question because, again, like I said, interoperability is defined differently, 10 different ways by 10 different people.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think when I think about interoperability, several different things come to mind. And I totally agree that it would be very hard to do kind of one-to-one, game item interoperability, because that requires such a deep level of integration that I think, at that point, Web3 isn't really doing much to move the needle, right? In theory, if two game studios really wanted to, they could enter into some sort of partnership for that. But to do that at scale seems at least almost impossible. But when I think about it, I do go to a few different places in terms of, one, on the aesthetic side, right? Like what you were just saying. I think, when we're looking at the metaverse space and we are talking about maybe, what's happened the last couple of years in the NFT space, right? And this kind of boom of PFP collections and people kind of finding their digital identity that's different from who they are, right? And we start to look at Ready Player One and some of those examples. I do think that, as we start to develop asset standards and 3D model standards, rigging, standards, and we start to either have much better tech for, retargeting bones and things like that, or we just have standardized rigs like the Unreal Engine Mannequin or the Unity rig that projects can use. We start to see the potential, for example, to have a humanoid avatar be usable across, various games. But when and so I think that could be our kind of first low hanging fruit example. But I agree totally that infrastructure wise, that's where the magic is actually made. It's
Yeah,
how do we do that?
I would push back a little bit on that humanoid. I mean, in reality, game assets have to be optimized for the world that they are in, right? So to have something that works from an interoperable way assumes a certain amount of homogeny, right? Which then takes away from the value of what it is that you're actually earning. It's like, wow, this looks amazing here, but it can't look amazing there because one game was built on Unreal versus one game, or one world was built with Unreal or homebrew tech versus Unity versus whatever. I think you have to be careful that if you want something to go across something broadly, like it has to be open-ended. It can't be, it can't be really custom made for the experience that you want it to be in. And I think players, gamers, individuals, like they want to show their stuff off, right? They want to have value. They want it to be really, popping, so to speak. So if you build something that looks unbelievably incredible within the world that you've created or the infrastructure that you've created or the narratives that you are telling, it's not going to play the same way somewhere else because like you said, the design challenges, the continuity, the coordination, like it just doesn't work at scale. So like I said, I always caution people think the dream is interoperability. Total interoperability. Like I want to take this from here to here to here. And that is possible to a degree, but I don't know that it's the holy grail of the end all be all that everybody thinks it is. I think the idea is sexy and really seduces me when I think about like how cool would this be if I could literally show off anywhere in the digital world with this. And I think that's possible to a degree, but maybe not to the extent or to the impact that I think that people think. I think once you start to think about it really deeply, you understand kind of all the challenges that exist, and that's why it hasn't happened so far. But look, someone will crack the code on it. There'll be a first iteration of it. It won't be very good because first iterations really aren't. And then at some point it'll evolve. Whether it gets to that pinnacle that we all hope it will and drives economic viability, I don't know. But those are my thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, no, and I probably oversimplified when I called that low-hanging fruit because it's certainly not low-hanging fruit. I think maybe it's the lowest hanging when you compare it to actual, game items.
Right.
but
Fair enough.
probably not actually low hanging fruit. I
Fair
do
enough.
think though, you start to see the direction that Epic's going with the metahuman, for example, and
Right.
kind of the interoperable nature of that across, Unreal Engine products at least. Of course, and then they're doing they're developing tech, for example, to optimize that model and use it for games like Fortnite, which are obviously a very different aesthetic. And so there's some, I guess, movement, I think, from the big players in that direction. But I guess where I actually get excited, and what got me excited back in 2017 when I got into the space and I was still working as an IP lawyer, was the potential for some degree of interoperability from a legal standpoint, right? This is the first time really in history that we have the ability to convey an ownership interest in something other than a sublicense to the underlying IP. And while that gets very, technical to some degree, it potentially creates the groundwork for an infrastructure where we can see licensing deals happen that wouldn't require explicit approval to have a certain asset in a game or in a metaverse. And what I mean by that is the potential that, we could see an infrastructure develop similar to the physical world, where if I purchase a Superman avatar from DC, an officially licensed avatar, there may be 20 to 30 metaverse platforms and games that can automatically support that without explicit approval from DC. And the reason for that is because now we can convey tangible ownership rights in this underlying asset, right? That's separate from, hey, I'm granting you a sublicense to use this within this closed atmosphere. So what I think could end up happening, and should end up happening really, as the regulators and judges start to catch up, is that we could see the ecosystem evolve, from an interoperability standpoint, just because before it was very, very hard. Even if we could do it technically, it was very hard to do it legally, right? Because you had to have that direct collaboration between two game producers. Now, at least there's the possibility, right? Because NFTs as digital assets are starting to look more tangible than they did before, that we could see schemes like the existing infrastructure for IP in the physical space, right? Where you slap a logo on a t-shirt and you can take it anywhere, and you can sell it and you can do all these things and you have rights, because it's not that you own the logo, you own the t-shirt, right? And so I think that we have the potential now to start seeing, this legal infrastructure developed for interoperability that wasn't really possible before. And I got excited about that. We still haven't seen it over the last 6 years. So we'll see, how much more time it takes for these things, the wheels to be put in motion.
I mean, the thing, right? So as an IP attorney, you'll know that the first thing the brand will say is like, wait a minute, you get this forever in perpetuity and you can take it to all these different digital experiences. Like them letting go of that revenue share, like the revenue potential, like that's not going to be the legal challenge. It's not going to be the kind of infrastructure development challenges. It's going to be getting the rights holder to put a value on what that is, right? And a value that both sides can agree to, because you're talking about a real slippery slope. And as you know, those people are super greedy and not really educated from the standpoint of they don't understand it. So their initial reaction is to reject it, right? If you say, give me the rights to this so I can take it to any digital world in perpetuity forever because I own this NFT, they'll be like, okay, what are you going to pay me? Like, because it better be a ton, because otherwise we could sublicense those rights 1,000 times and make way more money. Like, it's going to be the bottom line for them that's going to drive whether this is a possibility or not. That's what makes this non-trivial. And again, I don't want to get into the weeds about but I've spent my whole life, whether it's the NFL or it's, Marvel Studios or it's whatever, or, hip hop and R&B artists. I've spent a lot of my career doing, licensing content for my games, right? And these people are so unbelievably protective of their brand and making sure that you're not getting over on them. And when they don't fully understand a subject, their knee-jerk reaction is to shut down until they feel comfortable with it. And there's this real fear of the unknown there. So I appreciate the comment, but it's not like selling a t-shirt. Like selling an NFT collectible is one thing. That's all well and good. It's limited utility. It's limited applications. It's limited in what it can do. So therefore their financial downside is limited, which is how I think they look at it. So, like I said, I appreciate the conversation, but I think if you got down to brass tacks, whether you're talking to, IP apparel companies or music companies, what have you, they're going to be super protective to make sure that they're going to get theirs.
Absolutely. And I think it just, goes to show how much the space will still need to evolve, right?
Right.
Before we're there. When I think about NFTs, I think about it as a very interesting back end technology, right? That opens up some doors for us. But at the end of the day, it's back end tech, right? I think your initial comment was we got to show them that they can make more money this way, right? And then they'll adopt it. Right. If it's a naked Superman that they can sell wearables, that special customized DC wearables for, or maybe it's not Superman, maybe it's just an avatar that they put out, but only that avatar can wear the licensed DC wearables. I think that's when, there starts to be, there's a million models that if I was trying to convince them, maybe, right? Maybe they jump to some limited use. I think we'll see that probably 10, 15 years. I think it'll become more of a standard as the world becomes more digital. But that's, probably a naive belief that we'll be able to get over this hump of, people being angry at NFTs and it being on every talk show, kind of making us the laughing stock because, Trump has a dinner party and invites his NFT holders to it. So
look, NFTs are going to take foothold and they're going to become mainstream as soon as we stop calling them NFTs. I truly believe
totally
that if NFTs had a publicist, the first thing they do is you need to rebrand yourself, right? Call yourselves digital assets, call yourselves digital keys, call them anything but NFTs, because I think the knee-jerk reaction is so negative. And I think, inappropriately so. Like, I think NFTs are amazing. I think they're super powerful. And I think there's a real future for them in our world, in our lives. But until they get a rebrand, it's going to be a lot of tough uphill sledding for folks.
Absolutely. Havens Compass and BAC Games, do you guys have any thoughts on this topic of interoperability? Jump in.
Well, a lot has been said already, but no, definitely. I think one of the interesting points as well that Wax mentioned is that design-wise, it usually doesn't really make sense. Like if anyone's familiar with how Haven's Compass is looking, it would be so weird to add, I don't know, a FIFA character or the Fortnite character in there. It just would not work. So maybe within different titles within the same ecosystem, you could make it work because it's all under the same studio, so to say. But yeah, it's not the holy grail, I would say as well. I think it makes the most sense when you look at social media platforms. So you could have PFPs of your characters that are in game, and then that way people can kind of show those on social media or whatever. Or maybe you have game discovery platforms right now, rolling out here and there. And, if you can see like, oh, this user has this NFT, which means he was level whatever in that game, that's cool. He will probably be a good player. I think it makes most sense in those kind of, points instead of just copy pasting whatever assets from one game to another.
Yeah, I think, that's a good point. And definitely, I think we have to think as developers of, does this NFT, aesthetic from another universe break the aesthetic of our game? That can be weird. It's funny, when I was at GDC, I was talking to someone about that and they felt very strongly that we shouldn't have that sort of cross pollination. But then you look at games like Fortnite, right, which do it so blatantly. And, there's a similar style aesthetic and a lot of work that goes into making each one fit. But at the end of the day, it's a mishmash of everything. And, to some degree it works. It's working for them certainly, from a financial perspective. And I think that there's gonna be, worlds that it works in. I particularly get excited about the applications to the metaverse and kind of where we're going, with AR and VR and when I think about gaming, it's starting to think more about gamified experiences and not just, feature length games. And I do think that we are going to have, this idea of digital identities is going to grow. And so I definitely don't think it has to be in every game, and I think a total, it's totally unnecessary because you do break the aesthetic of a lot of games that way. But I do think it's going to continue to evolve, and I think we're going to just see a different product market evolve for things that are interoperable, and I think certain people will be drawn to experiences because they can do things and represent themselves in the way that they want to represent themselves. And then I think others won't even, like, let's say they have a Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT, avatar that could be used everywhere. They may not want to be an ape, even if they can, in a, game that's styled as, a gladiator in the Roman Empire, because it would break. I mean, I certainly wouldn't, right? That would break the aesthetic of the game for me. So yeah, I mean, I think these are all very good points. I'm going to jump back to Spencer because I'm sure he's itching to move us forward. But I really enjoyed this conversation.
It's been a great discussion. But yes, we shall move on. So our first individual question is going to be to BAC Games. So what improvements to the traditional model do you think Web3 technology can bring to the racing game genre?
Right. I would say like all these Web3 infrastructures or things that we have like NFTs. I couldn't say like there won't be like any significant changes, but I would say all the records on the gameplay will be more precious because everything is now can be on chain. Like maybe your time attack record, all your modified on your cars and all these things will be on chain. And these things will be a very good track record for players as well. Because as a collector, you would like to know what happened to your cars and what happened to your team as well, right? So, and also for people who wanted to buy your car, let's say they want to buy your in-game item, right? They will have a track record for them to check like what happened to the car. It's basically like a real life. You can check what happened to the car, but now you have it in the game. And also because cars is actually something I would say it's something general. Probably you can use the same car in other games. Who knows? If the other games, somehow come to this, they can have the same applications for the same NFT series, then probably you can only one NFT, but you will be able to use it all the other games as well. So this is what we are actually looking forward to have. But yeah, but currently we're still on the stage on building. We try to find out like what is the best way for our communities and maybe for all of potential communities as well. Like what is the best gameplay we can build with our capacity.
Yeah, those are all a lot of really good examples. I think when I think about this question, more generally, I always kind of ask myself, why, if we're using NFTs, for me, the question is, why would it be important for someone to own this, right? Once we kind of define what ownership means in the digital space, in essence, NFTs really provide, a method to own and authenticate something that in a different way than was possible before. And so when you mentioned some of the kind of key ones, right? The transferability, kind of the on-chain data, the ability to verify and look up, right? So there's so much that kind of comes with this concept of ownership. And I think it's going to play out differently in different genres. I think there's definitely plus sides and minus sides, right? Because you don't necessarily want to create pay to win mechanics either. And I think that is a danger that we have in the NFT, gaming space I shouldn't even call it that. Maybe the blockchain enabled gaming space for items that could give you an advantage in a competitive game. And so we have a lot of founders on here, and it seems to kind of go into a couple different buckets. You tend to see the competitive games mainly integrating NFTs as skins, right? Aesthetics. Then you start to see, okay, games with certain components, maybe a single player game it allows a bit more of the pay to win because it's more of a pay to progress in that case, right? You're only taking away from your own game experience. But then we're seeing, I mean, just because NFTs are such a social experience, we're seeing a lot of hybridization there. For example, we've leaned very heavily into a progression-based system. So while you can own your items, what you're really owning is the amount of time that someone has put into optimizing that item and building it up over time, and kind of leaving kind of an achievable end game for people to compete in. And so I think it's interesting because there's so much experimenting happen in this space. I think racing games, there's some particularly cool things you could think about, whether it's pink slips. I know we've had some projects on here, kind of the both players stake their NFT and whoever wins takes both, that kind of Fast and the Furious type of situation, or just, like you said, on-chain metadata for track times and things like that. I think that sounds really cool. Leaderboards, right? We can have leaderboards on chain that are, dynamically dispersing things from smart contracts. There's a lot of cool things we can do inserting trustlessness, but yeah, I think for me, it's always about what does ownership improve in this game?
Awesome. Moving on to our next individual question, which is going to be to Michael. So what do you think are the advantages for games building on a highly scalable L1 like Wax?
Well, when you talk about, kind of building on an L1, I think you're asking me to kind of answer it in reference to what it's like versus building on an L2, an Ethereum-based L2. And let's be clear, L2s were built because the chains, couldn't handle, the traffic. They wanted increased, transactional velocity. They wanted kind of reduced time to finality. They wanted all these things that the L1 didn't offer. That's why you see L2s like on Polygon and Immutable are L2s for Ethereum. I think with Wax, Wax being built on the Antelope protocol, you do get a real robust set of features that you won't find on other EVMs, advanced permissioning, smart contract features and what have you. But, the benefit for Wax, if you're a developer, if you're thinking about what blockchain do I want to kind of come into, is that there's a bunch of advantages. First of all, we have somewhere north of 15 million unique active wallets, which is, an unbelievable kind of number. And why do we have, that many unique active wallets? Well, we have it because the ability to create a cloud wallet is 2 clicks. Like, I think we take advantage of last count of something like 9 single sign-ons. So things that your customers are already used to seeing, whether it's Google Auth or whether it's Facebook Connect or it's Twitter Connect or Twitch Connect or what have you, Discord Connect. Like, we use, already established things that people are comfortable with. And William Quigley, who's our founder, he had this great observation. He said, what we learned at Disney, because he was in Disney, consumer products in the licensing group. And he said that they found that customers invariably opted into convenience over security concerns every single time. So when something was more convenient, even in the face of it being a security risk, they would always take the more convenient path. The thing that you'll find about creating a cloud wallet is it's super convenient. It's super fast. It's super easy. And it uses, protocols and user experiences and onboarding that people are already used to seeing. Like, they show up like, oh, I know what to do here. And that's why we've been able to create so many wallets so quickly. On top of that, with Wax, we're really, aggressive in helping our developers get exposure to this audience, right? And I think the biggest challenge that we all face as developers is user acquisition. User acquisition is really hard and it's really, really expensive. And everybody in every part of the world, consumer packaged goods, entertainment, music, movies, websites, you name it, everybody's fighting for your eyeballs and your attention. So when we kind of bless a project or a game or a collection or what have you as something that is kind of quote unquote Wax approved, not that we have a label, but we do put things above the fold in prominent places in our world that say you should pay attention to this. So now all of a sudden we're directing up to potentially 15 million people to get exposure to something. And we do that really aggressively with the groups that, that we align with kind of philosophically and ideologically. And so, and then you just factor in, the cost of transactional wax. It's always free. And the time to finality is really, really low. So we offer what we think is a very Web 2-like experience for Web 3 people, because again, we're trying to give similar, experiences in our world as what they experience outside of our world when they're going on other digital ecosystems, whether it's Amazon or what have you. And to that point, like I said, we learn a lot of lessons and we try to do things differently. Brawlers, which is the first title that, Wax Studios launched back in March of 2022. We have a fully baked client that's built in Unity, and you can download it on the Epic Game Store. And I think we were the second ever Web3 game to do that. We did a promotion with Amazon Prime Gaming. I think we were the first or second group to ever do that as well. So we're trying to lead mass adoption. And the reason why we're able to do that is because the reason why we do that is because we want to bring people into the Wax ecosystem. We want them to create a cloud wallet. We want them to see how easy it is. We want them to not be afraid of all the bad things they've heard about Web3. It's like, oh wow, I go to the Epic Game Store anyway. I know how to open and by the way, we talk about kind of NFTs and rebranding them, and the words matter. So when players come in, new Web 2 players come in, and they go to the Epic Game Store, and they download Brawlers as an example. The first thing you need to do is you need to have a cloud wallet. But we don't say create a cloud wallet. We don't scare you right away and say these NFTs are required. We say create an account. Now, we're creating a cloud wallet in the background, but they don't need to know that because that doesn't matter. What matters is they're creating a consumer interface to get into the game that they're familiar with and they're comfortable with. Like, oh yeah, I create accounts all the time. This is nothing different to me. Therefore, they move forward. So again, I think that when you work with Wax, not only is the L1 robust and fast and secure and cheap and it's everywhere in this world, but then working with us as a partner, like the lessons that we can impart to you, whether it's developer relations, whether it's user onboarding, whether it's lessons that we've learned, we are happy to share those broadly to help create a more successful experience for, our partners.
Yeah, it's so interesting having kind of been early in the space and followed Wax, for a long time. I think that you guys were building a gaming blockchain before the gaming meta even really came to, right? Because I think in the NFT movement, you guys landed some incredible deals, but it was such an early time, and everybody was very focused. It was a very Web3 crowd, right? It was a lot of people coming from crypto, and you guys still had tremendous success bringing in huge licensing deals and really great, content. But I think that, at the end of the day, a vast majority of the users were people who were downloading MetaMask wallets and all these things, right? And so I think what we're seeing now, as you talk about this exchange between convenience and security and kind of the gaming space as it exists right now, gamers, ultimately really don't care in the large majority, right? They want a seamless experience. They want to play fun games, I think we have to some extent, we have to make them know in kind of the least intrusive way, right? Because at the end of the day, sure, if you build a great game, people will play your game and you don't want to create any additional barriers. But there are unique things about Web3 that come with, the ownership of assets, the ability to transfer them, and certain limitations, I think, as we start to get into regulations and age requirements in certain jurisdictions and things like that, right? So I think, and I guess this is probably just my opinion, I think that while you guys were probably a little ahead of the times on the NFT movement in terms of, that bridging between the Web 2 and the Web 3 space, I think you guys are kind of perfectly positioned for this movement into the traditional gaming space. And frankly, the reality is that while, a lot of Web3 users may not be looking at Wax or may be looking at Wax, because you do have such a big wallet ecosystem, you guys are kind of targeting the future users, right? And you're building a blockchain that works for those future users. And so, yeah, sure, we're always going to have people who want to participate on ordinals on Bitcoin layer 1, and they say, you know what, I don't care about paying gas costs as long as it's fully on chain, and that sword that I own needs to be fully on chain, great, right? Fully on chain gaming, great. But that's not necessarily the use case, for the vast majority of this.
Yeah, you touched on a couple, and I'll be really quick because I want to give other people a chance to talk. But little known fact, although I'm sure people on this call know this, like Wax started off on Ethereum. For 2 months, the founders like, we're going to build this NFT, high velocity, high transactional volume, protocol, and we're going to build it on top of Ethereum. But they did the math and they're like, look, this won't scale at all. And we want to build a gaming based, layer one, blockchain. Full stop. Like that's the future of what we want this platform to be. Like it was always built from day one with gaming in mind. When they realized they couldn't do it on Ethereum back in 2017 or whenever they first started kind of, theory crafting around it, they moved to the antelope protocol, and the rest, as I say, is history. But look, I think the other thing that gets lost a lot is the difference between GameFi and asset ownership. Like I think 100% of the players in the space today want to make a profit, which I don't think is possible. Let's just start with that, which is maybe a little bit fatalistic. But what I do think is really powerful is that selling your stuff, even for a fraction of what you paid, is much better than what is out there today. And if you look at the dollar volumes, it's no comparison. Like in 2023, Web2 players spent $200 billion on gaming assets, and they owned none of them. Like none of it. Like that was all just $200 billion in sunk cost. Imagine being able to tell a Web2 player, you can get 25% of your money back or 10% of your money back. Night and day, they would come over and they say, yes, I want to do that, because right now you're retained in a game out of guild, right? Like I've spent so much money, I can't quit now. Like that's a terrible position to be in, but that's a position that 90% of gamers are in. They don't quit because they spent too much. Now Web3 comes along and says, great, here's an off ramp. Spend freely because you can sell freely. Like that is such a powerful, powerful thing for players to understand. And I understand the goal and desire is profitability, and yay, wouldn't that be great? But there's another subtext here that can't be overlooked, or a narrative that can't be overlooked, which is allowing players not to feel imprisoned by the games they're playing. I mean, you're supposed to be retained because you're enjoying yourself, not out of remorse and guilt. Like that's something I don't think that gets talked about enough. And that's something I very much believe in as well.
Awesome. Totally agree. So moving on to our final individual question here for Justin at Havens Compass. How do you think Web3 technology enables better competition or gameplay in PvP shooter style gaming?
Very great question. We were talking with, I'll give a very quick example. We were talking with some esports team a while ago, one at GDC as well. And they mentioned, which was very funny to us, that sometimes these teams do an event and they win some cash prize, whatever, and it can take up to months for them to pay out, which is, I don't know, it seems insane to me, but I guess that's the way it works with some of these events. So you can all do this with contracts. It's very easy, I would say. And other than that, there is one thing that you can implement in gaming. The legal side might be a bit tough, which is wagering. So you could, I don't know, play for NFTs or maybe play for tokens. Again, this might be tough because of the legal side of things, and I'm sure Satoshi first can then speak more of this, considering his background isn't legal. But these are things that can all enhance gameplay, so to say. So those are very, two very short examples that I think that this can really help in PvP style gameplay.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that there have been a few games that have been experimenting, first person shooters that are experimenting with a model where, everybody stakes a certain amount of money, and when you kill someone, you take that money in their native token in the simplest examples. And I think we still have a bit of time and just waiting to see what some courts do with these things. And I think the regulations are going to depend on each jurisdiction. So I do think there's some risks involved, but there's also a lot of potential for these real money type experiences in crypto. And frankly, I think the whole Web3 gaming space is going to have some challenges as, regulatory bodies get involved if this becomes kind of the new meta in the next couple of years. But I think there's real potential for the courts and regulators to, at least in some jurisdictions, open up. I do think we're going to have much more built out disclosure requirements than we currently do. You look at what the EU did with, the privacy requirements and, some of the cookies policies and a lot of the things, just browsing the internet and use of information and things like that, all these requirements that websites have because of regulatory bodies. I definitely think we're going to start to see a lot more of that in real money gaming. And, I think there's also going to have to be kind of fail safes put in place. I think one of the bigger problems with any kind of real money or wagering is the potential for exploits within the game. I think that it's hard to avoid liability as a developer when things go wrong and there's real money at stake, just because there's so many things that could go wrong, right? And I think that's where there's a potential bad perfect storm of projects, rushing to get games out to market in alpha, holding big airdrop campaigns and including wagering in the game without having a finished product that can be exploited. And then, you start to see some rumblings of potential legal action. Now, that said, I have been kind of flabbergasted a bit by the lack of legal action we see from consumers in this space. As someone who spent several years fighting litigation, I'm surprised that we don't see more class action lawsuits and consumer type cases being brought against NFT projects at Rug and, founders who steal everyone's money or, content creators who are taking, things under the table, but not, disclosing these things. I mean, this space is rampant with consumer type issues. And I think we haven't quite seen the plaintiffs bar get their hold on the space yet. But I think it comes with a certain degree of self-policing. I think projects that are involving real money or wagering and things like that need to be knowing that they're doing so in a very gray, regulatory environment and need to be ready to completely change their model should business, should regulations come out that, touch on some of these things. My guess is it's going to get a bit more restrictive than where we currently stand. But we'll see, we'll see. And I think that's all we can do is kind of plan for the future and work with what we have now. Right. So, I definitely like to see the experimentation though. There's been some really cool use cases of that, particularly in FPSs. So I know I just talked, but we are getting to the end of the hour. So I want to make sure we hit a couple different things before we sign off. One is the winner of our giveaway. So every week we're going to be giving away 5 crystals or more. We might do a couple extra drawings in the future. But the crystals are essentially the main NFT resource within our game. They are the thing that lets you forge different items, optimize them, make them into their best potential use case. And there's, a couple different ways you can get crystals. One is to own, certain avatars within our collections, the Legionnaires and the 8 Army. Another is to play the game. You can earn crystals by playing the game. And then the final one is participating in activities like this Spaces. So the winner for today is one of our very own this time, No Trunks. Congratulations. Thank you for being here. And, thank you to the people who show up every week. I've seen, some of you guys here, probably the 90% of the 73 episodes that we've had. So really huge shout out to you guys and thank you for joining again today. Really glad that we could see so many new faces. I see a ton of PFPs that I don't recognize. So definitely big shout out to the guests for bringing their communities in strong. It's been awesome to have you on this space. I see a pretty diverse crowd of PFPs. What I will say is, if you enjoyed the space, please do follow the Hideout account, as we will be doing this every week and providing more content from that account. We're going to keep hosting it on the Satoshiverse space, but we will be pushing it out on the Hideout account. And then, yeah, if what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let everyone else have the mic for a few minutes, just to, if there's anything coming up, if you want to plug anything, or just say that, goodbye, that is all good. But I'll open up the mic to you guys. But with one last final plug, that if you didn't already see the post for Legions 2029 at the top, check it out. We just released our newest version of our game. It is available for download, and there's tons of stuff that you can get, but only during this season. So jump in there. It's free to play. I'm really excited to continue the conversation with all the guests. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to the guests who joined. Please follow all the speakers as well. There are some great projects here doing some really great things, as you just heard. So I will turn off my mic, and then once I hear crickets on the speaker side, I'll wait about 30 seconds because there's a delay, and then I will end the spaces. Thank you, everyone.